Hey GIS enthusiasts! Welcome back to another detailed ArcGIS Pro tutorial. Today, we are diving into Supervised Image Classification, a powerful technique used in remote sensing and land cover mapping. In this video, we'll cover how to train classification models, select training samples, apply classification algorithms, and refine results for accurate land use analysis. If you're into GIS, remote sensing, or geospatial analysis, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more ArcGIS Pro, GIS programming, and Python tutorials. Let's get started.
Okay, so I have added my data here. So I have my Landsat imagery. Okay, so I'll be creating my classified image of this data. Okay, so for that, so I'll be doing my supervised classification here, which means that I have to do some kind of manual work first. That is the first method, which is creating your training samples. So collecting your training samples or training areas. So that is the first step that you will have to do. Okay. So for collecting your training samples, first you will need to go to your imagery. Okay. In imagery, under classification tool, we have an option here called training samples manager. Okay. So it is used to create and manage training samples for supervised classification. So we can actually create training samples using this tool. Okay. So under imagery, classification tools, we have a training samples manager. So I'll just click on training samples manager. Alright. So my training sample is created here. Okay. So by default it will be showing my NLCD 2011, which is National Land Cover Database 2011 schema. Okay. So I could either use this or I could create a new schema here, which is this one. Okay. So this is my schema here, and I'll be creating my samples here. Okay. So first I'll need some classes. Okay, so in schema we'll need some classes. So the classes could be what? So in here I'll be creating my classified image of the land use land cover, right? So the classes here could be first one, it could be the water bodies, right? So I have many water bodies in here, right? Another thing, it could be my vegetation, right? I have different kinds of vegetation here. And another thing could be the barren land. Okay, so I could have the barren land here. And similarly, what else could I have? Let me see what classes I had in my default. Oh, so I'll have my water. Okay, so I'll have water, right? And I could have, yes, I could have my built-up area, right? So developed areas I can have, and I can have forest or vegetation, and maybe I can also have my barren land. So I'll be creating 4 classes. Okay, so in here I have the create new schema. So I'll just click on here, create new schema. Yes, a new schema has been created here. Now to the schema, I'll be creating my classes. The first class would be water. Okay, so I'll be creating water first, and value I'll just give 1, and just give 1, right? I'll just give 1, and color I can give something like something bluish. Okay, so yeah, so I'll just click OK, and new water has class has been added. Okay, now to this water class I'll be adding my training samples. Okay, to collect the training sample, just click on water, and then in here we have an option here called polygon. Okay, so what does it do? It selects pixels or objects by drawing a polygon around them. So I'll be creating my training sample. So what we are doing, we are actually collecting some kind of training areas, right? So the base or the theory of doing supervised classification is first we'll take some samples of known areas. Okay, so I'll be taking some samples from water body. I'll be taking some samples for vegetation, some samples for the built-up areas, some samples for the barren land. So I'll be creating or taking some samples here. So using these samples, right? So after taking the saving the samples, these samples can be used by the algorithm, the classification algorithm, and then it will or it could actually classify the whole image based on the sample that we are given. Okay. So a sample is a small known portion of pixels that we are assigning, and using those samples, the algorithm could easily or accurately classify the whole image we have. Okay, so first I will be collecting samples from my water. Okay, so I'll just select water and then click on this polygon tool and then just select pixels from my water body. Okay, so I'll select this area and I will select this area. So I'll have to make sure that I'll get everything right. So I will get every water body there is. So I'll be selecting this area, and if I go over here, I have different kinds of water bodies in here. So I'll be selecting this water body. I'll be selecting pixels from here. Make sure you don't take pixels from any other classes. Okay. So if you're taking water bodies, make sure you only get or you only take pixels from water bodies itself and not any other kinds of objects. Okay. So let me just take some more. So after you're done collecting your training samples, what you can do is you can actually combine them. Okay, so I have this many samples collected here. Okay, so I'll just select my first photo class and then I'll just scroll over, select my last one. Okay, so I can press shift and then select the first and last one so that everything will be selected, and then I can just click on collapse here. So this will collapse all my water training samples into single one. Okay, so I have selected 12 samples here. Okay, so that's since I'm just showing you guys, I'm just selecting 12 here. So for better accuracy, it's better that you guys take up samples more than 50. Okay, so from each class, you could take up samples more than 50. Okay, so I have selected my samples 12 in here. Okay, so after that I've done with my water class, I can just create other class. Okay, so I'll just right click, then schema, add new class, and I'll give the name like developed. Okay, so developed is done. I can give value of 2 and color something this red color and click OK. Okay, so similarly I'll be selecting my samples from these areas also. So I'll select develop, click on the polygon tool, and I'll just select samples from those built up areas or the developed areas. So I'll select these samples like this. Not getting too much of developed areas without the difference from vegetation. Too much vegetation. So I'll just drop here. I'll just now select all of the developed one. I'll just click on collapse. Okay. So next class I could create something for vegetation. So I'll give the name vegetation here. I'll set the class value as 3 and create something greenish in color for the vegetation. Now whatever that is the red in here is actually vegetation. So I could have like, just created two classes, something like forest, right? So these thick darker regions will be forest and these lighter regions will be your cultivated areas. And these lighter areas could be grassland. So I could have done that. But for now I'm just going with a single class that is vegetation. So all these reddish areas will be my vegetation. So vegetation will take yeah. So vegetation will be created. So I'll be setting up training samples from a vegetation area. I should also take up samples from this area so that I can also get some grasslands and probably the cultivated areas also when I'm classifying my image. Okay, so I'll just get these areas. Okay, so after that is done, I'll just select all of them and then color. So I have almost the same number of water developed and vegetation, and next I'll create a new class for the barren land. So I'll just set barren here. Value will be 4, and for those areas I can give something like and yellow color. Okay. So in here, these areas are actually barren land.
You have not selected the create polygon.
Okay. And maybe you could just confirm then that if you set the base map, it's not totally accurate because there could be changes made. But then since those are barren land, maybe I could just maybe just yeah, these lighter green areas are actually really barren land. Okay. So I can just set the pixels from here. Okay, these fours also could be barren land. Yeah. So the greener color in your infrared, the color infrared, the fast color imagery is actually barren land. Okay. But then make sure you don't get any vegetation areas inside your barren land because then those might be considered as your true land color. Okay. So take up as much as barren land that you can in from your image. Okay. So this is a barren land. This is very barren. And similarly, I have a really bad blank here. Maybe I'll take some from the south side also. So from here, I will take up something from here, some from here. Okay. So I have created my iron sands here. So I'll select all of them and then collapse. Okay. So I have now a schema, right? I have the schema here and I have the training classes here. Okay. The next step that we have to do is we have to actually save both of them separately. Okay. So I have to save my schema as well as my training samples. Okay, so in your schema we have an option here, right? So this will save. Okay, so this will save our current classification. Okay, and then we have our save as. Okay, so it will actually create a copy of a classification here. Okay, so the first time we are creating the save, so click on save here, and then we can give a name of schema 1. Okay, and I'll set the output location where actually want to save my schema. So I'll set the name as schema 1. Save, and it says schema saved successfully. Okay, the next I have to do is I have to save my classes. Okay, so I have different 4 classes here. So similarly, I'll set click on save, and I already have classes here. Okay, so the classes 3. I'll set the name as classes 3. Okay, so the classes will be set, and I'll click on save here, and those also will be saved. Okay, so I have my training schema and the training samples saved separately. So this is called the training sample. Okay, so we have just created our training sample, which is our schema and our training classes. So both them together will be our training sample for our uh, sample, like training sample. So what did we say? So what did we say in the PPT again? It said, I think, training area, right? So training area. So we have actually created the training areas. Next we need to do is we need to actually use this training area to create a classified image. Yeah. So if you have created that one, okay. So we have saved one. Then we'll go to imagery. Okay. So we have the classification wizard here. Click on classification wizard. Here we will be setting up our classified image. Okay. So the classification method we're doing is the supervised or unsupervised. So we're doing the supervised classification here, and the classification type we're doing is pixel based, right? So we're taking the pixel values to do our classification. So the classification type is pixel based. Next we have to load up the classification schema. Okay. So we have to go over to where we have saved the schema. So I think this one schema 1, let me see the time, 21:11. Yeah. So this is one. The schema 1.tcs I have saved. And next thing, I have to set up the training samples. Okay, so where did I save the training samples? I have to load them up also. So the training samples was classes 3.sh. Okay, so I've set the method as supervised. Classification type is pixel based, and I have loaded up the classification schema as well as the training samples. Okay, so after that is done, you can just click on next. So it will actually load up our data, right? So this was the same schema that we loaded. These are the same number of classes that we loaded. Okay. So if this is fine, maybe if you want to actually add to these samples, you can just directly add to these samples, right? You can just click on what develop. You can take the training samples again, or you can just click on next. And here we will be doing our classification. Okay, so we have different kinds of classification. Here we have maximum likelihood, we have random trees, we have support vector machine, we have a care nearest neighbor. Okay, so all these are different algorithms. So you could actually try these different kinds of algorithms, and you can also explore how these how these algorithms differ. Okay, so currently 1, 2, 3, 4, we have three. Yeah, we have four different algorithms available in ArcGIS Pro for the classification. So you could either use maximum likelihood, you could use subparameter machine. So all these are different machine learning algorithms that this ArcGIS Pro uses for our classification method. Okay, so I can set the subparameter machine and the maximum number of classes we could just like, so by default it is 500. Okay, so what you guys can do is by default you can give the 500. Okay, click on run and then you can just change the number to lesser. So I could just set it as 300 and let it run. Maybe I could give it as 700, let it done. And you can just compare how these training samples or how these outputs differ. Okay. So if I just click on run here, it will actually trains the classifier. Okay. So the training classifier is run. So it will train the classifier and then it will actually create up an image there. And it has actually created a preview now. So using the 500 class, it has actually created a preview. Okay, so if you are not okay with the preview that you have given, you could just go back, right? You can change the classes again. Okay, and you can also change the parameters again. Okay, so you can just give here 250, right, and let it run. So using this parameter, it will be writing up other kind of or a different kinds of classifier, and it has created another preview. Okay, so regarding which one is you okay with, you can just click on next. Okay, so if you are actually okay with the output or the preview that you have got, you can click on next. Okay, and then here is where we'll be saying our data set. Okay, so the name I can give, so I can just give the classified the default name. Okay, and now if I just click on run, it will actually create this official output. Okay, so these previews are actually temporary files and these will be lost if you close your project. Okay, so these two whatever the previews that it's creating, those will be temporary data. Okay, so if you close your project, this data will be lost and only the data that is created here, this classified data, only this will be a permanent output. Okay, okay, so it says a classified image has been created. Okay, so this will be a official output or the actual output. But there's still some options for you guys. So if you click on next, you can actually merge classes. This is actually useful when you're doing our unsupervised classification. Okay, and click on next, and we in here we'll have the option to reclassify an object. Okay, so if in case you have seen that some object has been wrongly classified, okay, so you can actually uh, so for example, so okay, so this class is actually a water body. Okay, so no, so this green one, okay, it's actually a vegetation. But if it's been wrongly classified as vegetation and if it was actually water body, you could actually convert these classes into water body. Okay, so for that you can do it, you can just click on reclassify within a region. Okay, so select reclassify within a region, Okay, so can reclassify within a region, and the current class you can set as vegetation. You're trying to change the vegetation into water body. Okay, so current class is vegetation, new class is water. Okay, and then I could just draw up a boundary like this, so that whatever vegetation class that is inside the boundary will be converted to water, like you see here. Okay, and if this one, so this is actually barren land, and if I want to convert this barren land into vegetation, I can select current class to barren, new classes vegetation, and then I can just select these regions. So those regions, so inside the region that I have selected, any barren class, right, any current class will be converted to the new class. So in here the region I selected, whatever the region that were barren will be converted to vegetation. Okay, so similar, so this way you can actually do some modification by yourself, right? So if the output that you got is not 100% accurate, you can change these kinds of specific areas by reclassifying the uh, whatever the classes that you got. Okay, and after you are done with the reclassify, you can just click on run, and then it will create your final output. Okay, so this previews are always temporary data and will be lost when you to close the project or you restart your system. This preview data will be lost, so only the name with the classified or whatever the name that you give, those will be uh, persisting till whatever the thing is, because those or only those will be saved inside your actual data set. Okay, so it's out, it is still generating. So a reclassified image has been created here. Okay, right, so all this preview I can just turn off, and if I don't want them, I can just remove them, because anyway they'll be removed when you're done with or when you're closing the project, because those will be your temporary data. Okay, so and if you see over here, you can see that it's not actually accurate, right? My data is not actually accurate because I only chose like 10 or 12 classes from, but 10 or 12 samples from each class. Okay, so based on the accuracy and the number of classes you select, your output classified image will have much more accuracy. Okay, so since I only chose like 10 or 12 samples from each class, the output is mostly like this, because it says that all these areas are coming under barren and not developed, but it's not actually developed. Okay, so you'll have to collect more samples from all the areas that you have, so that those will be accurately classified into different classes. Okay, so after that you can just click on finish, and the classification wizard will be closing up.